Blood and Blue Moon, a dark fantasy story. Her name was Azara Kett, and she had not been worshipped in 300 years. Once, whole civilizations had built their cities facing east so they could watch her rise. Priests had poured black wine into the desert sand and called her name until their throats split. Children born under a full moon were offered to her temples, not in blood, she had never wanted blood, but in devotion. In awe. In the breathless understanding that something ancient and beautiful moved through the world, and her name was Azara. But gods are patient only until they are not. She stood now at the edge of the Khaleth desert, where the dunes rolled like the backs of sleeping giants, her bare feet sinking into sand that remembered her. The desert always remembered. It had been made from her exhaled breath in the first age, when the world was being assembled piece by piece and she had leaned down from the heavens and whispered warmth into the frozen nothing. She was tall, taller than any woman had a right to be, with skin the deep, rich darkness of a moonless sky just before dawn, the kind of dark that holds light inside it rather than shutting it out. Her locks were long, thick ropes of midnight black hair woven through with gold thread and the shed shells of scorpions, each one gleaming like amber. Her eyes were the color of the desert at noon, a burning, liquid gold that shifted like sunlight on hot sand, and when she blinked, a second set of eyelids swept sideways, the ancient reflex of something older than human. Her tail, because yes, she had a tail, great and segmented and midnight black, curling over her left shoulder with its stinger dripping slow, luminescent venom the color of a new moon, rose and fell with her breathing like a creature of its own. She was magnificent. She was terrifying. She was so unutterably lonely that the desert wept with her, though no human I would ever call blowing sand by the name of tears. In her right hand, she held a scorpion, a small, pale thing, barely the length of her thumb, and she watched it crawl across her knuckles with an expression that was almost tender. Another night, she told it. Another moon. The scorpion paused, raised its tiny stinger in greeting, and she almost smiled. Almost. The blue moon was coming. She could feel it in the hum of her bones, in the pull of the tides that answered to her sister Nyera's call, in the way the stars had been shifting all month, leaning slightly to the left as if trying to get a better look at what was about to happen. The blue moon was the night the worlds touched. The night a god could be seen. She had spent the last 3 centuries being invisible, walking through human cities like a ghost, close enough to brush shoulders with merchants and lovers and grieving mothers, but separated from them by the divine veil that kept the sacred things from bleeding into the mortal. She had watched them live and die and love and fail and love again, and she had ached with a hunger that had no name in any human language. She wanted in. She wanted to be known. She wanted, more than anything, though she would have dissolved the stars before admitting it aloud, to be loved. But gods were not made for love. Gods were made for worship. Weren't they? Her name was Eli Voss, and she was losing her mind one star at a time. She sat outside her tent in the Khaleth, her map spread across a folding table weighted down at the corners with smooth stones, her compass spinning slowly in her fingers. Around her, the archaeological camp was quiet, her colleagues asleep or gone, the dig site dark and covered, the generators humming low. She was supposed to be sleeping. She had not slept properly in 11 days. Not since the dreams started. They came every night now, a woman in the dark, her eyes burning gold, her voice low and resonant as a bell struck at the bottom of a well. She never spoke words she could understand. But she spoke directly into her chest, into the part of her that sat behind her ribs and had no scientific name, and whatever she said made her wake up with tears on her face, and a longing so acute it was almost physical pain. She was 32 years old. She was a cartographer and archaeologist specializing in pre-dynastic desert civilizations. She did not believe in gods. She did not believe in fate. She believed in maps. She believed in the precise, honest geometry of the world, the way things could be measured and recorded and trusted to stay where you put them. But the stars above the Khaleth had been moving. Not much. Not enough for any instrument to catch. But she saw it, the way she always saw the things that were almost but not quite right, the spatial instinct that had made her extraordinary at her work. The stars were leaning. They were looking at something. She set down her compass and looked up. And the night looked back. The blue moon was rising, slow and enormous over the eastern dunes, its light not quite silver, carrying some cooler hue beneath, a wash of blue so faint it might have been imagination. It flooded the desert in cold luminescence, and the sand became a sea, and Eli sat very still and felt the world change frequency around her. Then she heard the footsteps. She turned. She was standing 30 feet away, at the edge of the firelight's reach, half in shadow and half in blue moonlight, and for a full 10 seconds her brain refused to process what she was seeing. Tall. Impossibly tall, and beautiful with an intensity that hit her like a physical thing, like walking into a room where the air pressure had suddenly changed. Her gold eyes found her in the dark and held, and every careful, rational, measured thing inside her went completely, utterly quiet. The tail moved. It swayed behind her like a question. "You see me," she said. It was not a question. Her voice was exactly as she had heard it in the dreams, low and resonant, something struck deep in the earth. "I see you," she said. Her own voice came out surprisingly steady. She looked at her with an expression she couldn't parse, something between wonder and suspicion, the look of someone who has reached for something they didn't believe was really there and found it solid in their hand. "The blue moon," she said. "Yes." She took one step closer. The sand moved with her, rippling outward like she had weight that went beyond the physical. Once every few years, the veil thins. Mortals can see what is always present but hidden. She paused. "Most run." Eli looked at her for a long moment. "I'm a cartographer," she said. "I don't run from things I haven't mapped yet." Something shifted in her gold eyes. Something very old cracked open, just slightly, like a door that hadn't been opened in 3 centuries. "Eli Voss," she said. She had known her name before she gave it. "You have been dreaming of me. Every night for 11 days. I know." Her tail curled slowly, the stinger glinting. "I did not intend it. When a god is seen, truly seen, not just glimpsed or feared, sometimes a connection forms before the meeting. Like lightning finding the path before the thunder speaks." She stopped. "I have not been truly seen in 300 years. The firelight moved between them. She stood up from her folding chair, stood up slowly, the way you stand when you're approaching something you respect, and took a step toward her. "Then let me see you properly," she said. She went very still. She told her name as the blue moon climbed. They sat beside her fire, she cross-legged on the sand, her tail coiled behind her, she leaning forward with her elbows on her knees, and she spoke slowly at first, the way someone speaks when they are relearning a language they thought they had forgotten. She told her about the desert. About the first civilizations that had built their temples facing east. About the priests and the black wine and the children brought not in sacrifice but in blessing, laid in her temple for one night to be touched by divine grace before being returned to their families hale and sleeping. She listened with the particular quality of attention that had always been her gift, the complete, still, receiving kind, the kind that made people feel heard all the way down to the parts they hadn't meant to say aloud. She felt it. She felt the weight of her attention like warmth on her skin, and it frightened her, because she was a goddess and she was not supposed to need warmth. She was supposed to give it. "Why the scorpion?" she asked, nodding at the small pale one that had appeared again on her knee. "The scorpion does not sting without reason," she said. "It is not cruel. It is honest. It says, 'This is what I am. I will not apologize for my nature. But I will not harm you unless you reach for me with harm in your hands.'" She paused. "I find that admirable." "So do I," she said, and she was looking at her, not the scorpion. The blue moon was at its peak now, the smallest and most distant of the year, and perhaps that was why its light felt so clarifying. Stripped of the overwhelming nearness of a supermoon, it was precise. Surgical. It illuminated only what was true. Eli reached out her hand, palm up, the way she had seen her do it every night in the dreams she had accidentally sent her. She looked at her hand for a long moment. "I am not a gentle thing," she said. "I know. My venom can unmake a woman. I know that too. I have not been close to a mortal in 3 centuries. I know," she said softly. "And I've been dreaming of you for 11 days and I still can't map a single edge of you. I find that extraordinary." She held her gaze. "I'm not asking you to be gentle. I'm asking you to let me know you." Azara Kett, goddess of the scorpion and the desert and the patient dark, who had been worshipped and feared and forgotten and was still here, still standing at the edge of the firelight with 300 years of loneliness inside her like a hollow bone, placed her hand in her. The sand rippled outward for 50 feet in every direction. The fire burned blue. The small pale scorpion lifted its stinger in what could only be described as triumph. She did not intend to love her. She had not planned anything beyond the blue moon and perhaps, if the courage held, being seen for one night. Being real to one person for a few hours before the veil thickened again. But she came back the next night. She came back without the moon, in the ordinary darkness, and she sat outside her reach and called her name, not with ritual or offering, not the way the priests had done it, but quietly, conversationally, the way you call for someone you expect to find. She came. And the night after that. And the one after that. She showed her maps. Rolled them out on the desert sand and traced the lines with her finger, explaining the geometry of place, the way a cartographer must be simultaneously honest and interpretive, recording what is while knowing that all maps are also an act of choice, of emphasis, of love for certain contours over others. She showed her the stars as they truly were, not points of light but vast spheres of ongoing catastrophe, burning and spinning and throwing off their own children in the form of heat and radiation, blind to everything except the physics of their own existence. They're beautiful, she said. Even knowing that. Especially knowing that, she said. She learned quickly how to be near her without flinching, how to sit within range of the tail without the anxious, involuntary lean away that she had always seen in humans, in the rare moments any of them had been close enough. She never flinched. She adjusted, moving with a fluid physical intelligence that she found she couldn't stop watching. She learned that she took her coffee with no sugar and was offended by people who talked during films. That she cried at music occasionally and was embarrassed about it. That she had a scar on her left forearm from a dig in her 20s where a tunnel had collapsed and she had been the one who dug out 3 colleagues with her bare hands before the rescue team arrived. That she was afraid of deep water, not because of drowning, but because of what she couldn't see, which she found interesting, from a woman who spent her life in the desert and could read its blankness like a page. The night of the 2nd month, when the moon was a waning crescent and the desert was at its most absolute, she said, "I think I'm in love with you." She said it the way she did everything, directly, without drama, watching her face with the full quality of her attention. She wanted to tell her not to. She wanted to list the precise reasons this was catastrophically inadvisable. She wanted to be the goddess, the ancient, the unreachable, wanted to stand in her divine dignity and tell her that gods were not made for love, that she was mortal and she was not, that in 30 years she would be gray and in 60 she would be dust and she would still be standing at the edge of some desert calling herself lucky if she was glimpsed once per blue moon. Instead she said, "I know. And, I have been trying very hard not to love you back. And, I am failing." The mating bond formed the way it always had for her kind, not in ceremony or intention but in recognition, the moment when two beings looked at each other and something in the deep architecture of the soul said, "This one. This is the one I choose to be changed by." It cracked through her like desert lightning, and she felt the ancient divine isolation she had carried for 300 years fracture into 1,000 pieces, and she sat in the rubble of her careful loneliness and felt, for the first time in ages, warm. But bonds have costs. And the cost of a goddess bonding with a mortal was a thing the old priests had known, written in the deep scrolls, in the language before language. A god who mates with a mortal shares their mortality. Not all of it. Not instantly. But the thread that connected them would pull her toward her fragility, would wear the edges of her immortality like water wears stone, and one day, not soon, but not never, she would begin to age alongside her. She had known this. Had known it even as she placed her hand in her. She had chosen it anyway.